My name's Eric Nordberg. I'm the Dean of Libraries here at UT Martin. I want to welcome everybody this evening that's here in person. We've also got a live stream going of this event, so welcome to those that are tuning in. One of the nice things about the live stream is that the same address that was in our promotion for this event will also contain a recording of what Dr. Grubaugh is going to talk about tonight. If there are students here this evening who are interested, there's some sign-in sheets on the two back tables there. There's a program now that Student Affairs is running called UTM Plus. And if you're willing to put your name and your 960 number, your names will be entered into a drawing. They do drawings, I think, every week or every month from the UTM Plus. So those are on the back table there. Feel free. It's not required, but if you want to, you can be entered into that. A little bit of housekeeping. If you've not been in this space, restrooms are down back this way. You found the main entrance, and that's also the main exit, although behind this brick wall there's an emergency exit. So it's always good to know what your options are when you need them. Really glad to have people here. This is a double event. First of all, it's the first event for the spring semester for our UT Martin Research Series. This is a series that we started 4 years ago with input from the Provost's office. Dr. Cavalier is here tonight. And I think, as many of you know, UT Martin is largely known as a teaching institution, and we do a really good job of teaching students here. What a lot of people don't realize is that all of our faculty are required actually to do research, have a research agenda, publish, give conference proceedings, work with creative works. And so part of our desire with this series has been to highlight all of that work that gets done here by our faculty, and tonight will be a good example of that. We have got a list of the events for our spring semester series. You'll be able to find this on the runway page. I think it's on a couple of the screens in the building here. A month from now, we're going to have Ashley Kilburn from the College of Business who will be speaking. That will be a virtual-only event that we'll do online. But then we're going to have an event in March. Dr. Glass, John Glass, is going to have a group of the Honors College students who will talk about their research experiences working with faculty across the curriculum. And then Henry Glass, if you know Dr. Glass, or excuse me, Henry Giles will speak in April. She just recently got her PhD, although she's been teaching on campus for some time. And the research project that she did is quite interesting. She's going to talk about it. She's going to look at the experience of African Americans down in Haywood County. She did interviews with people in Brownsville. Very interesting work. And then we're going to wrap up the series, as we do each semester, with an off-campus event. Unfortunately for students that leave immediately after graduation, you'll miss that one, but Derek Shepard from the College of Education will give a presentation down at the Martin Public Library on research that he's been doing. So that's all part of our research series that we do here to highlight the work of our faculty on campus. Tonight is also a special event in that each semester the provost selects a featured faculty scholar, and some semesters picks two, which he's done for this semester as well. So Dr. Grubaugh is also one of the featured faculty scholars. There's a plaque up near the front of this building that lists all of those who've had this honor, which is great. You get your name incised on a little plaque. What he's not going to tell you is that he also gets some money. So he'll be able to, I'm sure, just turn around and spend that on students, because that's what he spends most of his money on here. I've had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Grubaugh since I arrived here almost 4 years ago, and that wasn't here at UT Martin. When I moved into my first rental house here, Jack lived across the street. He was the guy who told me when I asked when the plow was coming that there is no plow. I think the phrase was, God brought the snow, so we wait for God to take it away. And he was a little slow that first year, so I learned my lesson as a Michigan native. But the things that I learned about Dr. Grubaugh is that he's an extremely friendly person. He's an incredible photographer. If he's nice enough to let you join his Facebook feed, he posts some of the most amazing photos, wildlife photos, that I've seen in this area. He's also a great guy that just the other day I was driving back from Union City on the 2-lane, and I saw the snow in the field. And I thought, why is there snow in the field? And when I stopped to turn, I discovered that it was a gigantic flock, maybe thousands of white birds. I'm used to Canada geese from Michigan, but I was like, what the hell? So I took a picture of it and I texted it to Jack and I said, what's going on? Who are these birds? Oh, those are snow geese, and went on to tell me all about them. So take a picture of an insect, of a bird, of really anything, and he's my go-to guy for identifying local flora and fauna. So and I think just a generally generous person in that regard. Of course, he's also studied. He's an intelligent guy. He's got degrees from the University of Memphis, and I think from some, is it the Georgia thing, I think? Yeah. Go Dogs, there we go. And I think what he's told me is that he started out as a freshwater marine biologist to a certain degree, interested in fish, worked on the Mississippi River with various state, federal agencies, learned that fish really survive by eating insects, so he went back to school and he got an entomology degree. He's officially an entomologist, and then discovered that that connection between things like insects and fish and water and air are systems, and so he got his PhD in ecology. And so it's really interesting that he sees these systems, and I think that's quite a lot of fun. He's received a lot of grant money, in excess of $1 million, works on all sorts of different projects. How many here have ever seen his beetle barn? Okay, I think he's going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Thankfully, he also told me that he's got a condition that means that his nose doesn't smell bad things. So it makes it easier to work. But I've talked too long. I hope you'll put your hands together and help me welcome Dr. Jack Grubaugh.
Well, thank you, Eric, for the wonderful introduction. Thank you, everyone, for the awards and the chance to talk to you all about what I do. But I'm really not going to be talking so much about what I do. I'm going to be talking about what my students do, and I get to watch them. And so that's basically what we're going to be talking about today. So everybody hear me okay? I'm not much on microphones. I'm doing okay. I'm screaming. Okay. So, all right. So I want to be basically my talk is, as you all have seen, is beetles, bones, and bad moths. Okay. So it's really two talks. Over Bremhall. Basically, that's sort of the thing. And the nice thing about that is both of those departments have a very big agenda, and that the same agenda. And that agenda is basically providing opportunities to involve undergraduates in research. So that's what I try to do. And when it comes to insects, there's plenty, and bones, there are many, many opportunities for research. And so as we like to say, it's a great day to be a Skyhawk. Yes, that's what we do. So, okay, so start with my first work here on research opportunities. I want to talk about this little critter right here. Okay, this is my talk on beetles and bones. And this beetle is known as the hide beetle. And we have lots of different studies that are focused on the hide beetle itself. Okay, a little bit of background. First of all, what are hide beetles? That's a very good question. Okay, so because I'm a biologist and because I'm very much into taxonomy, I tend to use scientific names. So here's some scientific and common names. So these are in a group known as order Coleoptera, and Coleoptera are the beetles. The beetles, not the Beatles. Okay. I don't know if any of you noticed this, but if you go and autocorrect now, when I write Beatles a lot capitalized, I'm always autocorrected to Beatles. So it's just, so I'm not sure, but it's just so I do have to clean that up. Okay. There's a lot of them out in the world. there's probably more beetles than any other sort of animal. Beetles are animals. Okay, 400,000 species, of which there's this one family called Dermestidae. And this is what we work with. The Dermestidae are known as the skin beetles. Okay, the skin beetles because they eat things primarily that have skin. That's what they tend to go after. Okay, they feed on, and I always forget to mention this because people, aren't you afraid of what if you fell asleep or something? They go after non-living things. So as long as you're upright, you're pretty much okay. So they don't feed on living things. So feed on non-living animal matter. And what sort of animal matter? Anything. They'll eat it. Okay. In this group here, there's about 500 to 700. Again, most of them aren't important. The one that's important, the one you're looking at here, is called Dermestidae maculatus. That's my gal. That's my guy. That one here. And besides, they're known as the hide beetle is their common name, but they also have the common name, the flesh-eating beetle, which is like way cooler. So we tend to use that a lot more often. So it sounds pretty good. Okay. There are other domestics in the world, and because of that, my beetles kind of get maligned a lot. So I want to talk about some, real quick, the bad guys. These are not my beetles. Don't blame me for these things. The first one, there's two nuisance domestics, two nuisance skin beetles. One is called Anthraeus fairbaski, and there's a very good chance you may have seen this. This is not my beetle. Okay. This is known as the carpet beetle. Oh yeah, them. If you rent houses around here, you may have run into them. Okay, so they feed on fibers. So fibers, another animal products. This is wool damage, basically from these beetles here, and they're very, very common in this part of Tennessee. We see them all over the place, especially where I see when I have people contact me all the time and ask me what is as Dr. Nordberg was talking about. I get a lot of calls for what's this. Well, I get a lot of what's this on this one here. And what I've noticed is where you find these a lot are people that have allowed starlings to dwell in their houses somewhere. Starlings are cavity things. These guys seem to follow them. Wherever you have that, starlings are not the neatest animal in the world. They're dropping feathers. They're dropping over whatever else in your house, and it makes a great place for these guys to come in. And then once they get a foothold, you've got a problem. Not my beetles. Okay. The other one's kind of cool. This is Anthraeus museorum. This is kind of looks somewhat like that. This is known as the bowbug. Okay. And it gets its name because this one has a tendency to go after the hairs of horses, horsetail hair, as in violin bowstrings. And they can do a lot of damage to that. And they cause a condition which is known as exploding bow. So people start playing and the hairs have been weakened and poof, off they go. So again, these are not my beetles. My beetles can't be blamed for this damage. Having said that, my beetles can be pretty bad on their own too. Okay, so they worldwide, they play a lot of roles, and the worst role they probably play is they are a pest species on stored food products. So especially in third world countries, they'll wipe out dried fish collections, fish sources, all sorts of stuff. So they can be a problem, but I keep mine locked up and safe. Okay. So a little bit about their life history. This is them on one of their favorite food. They pretty much eat anything here. Okay, so what they do is they find something dead, and they lay their eggs right on that dead thing. Okay. They then hatch into little larvae, which of course then start feeding. And like all insects, they grow by molting and get a little bigger, get a little bigger each time. And they'll do that from 5 to 10 times. And this is what they look like as larvae. So kind of got a grubby looking thing here, and they go that. And then when they're as big as they're going to get this way, they burrow into something. Okay, so they have to go into something. So they'll go right through wood. My containers for these are not wood because they would just tear them up. So what we do is we put styrofoam blocks in there, make it nice and easy. They can burrow in there and they pupate. And why they pupate in there is because they're very vulnerable in that stage. They eat each other. So as long as if they get hungry, they'll eat each other. So we let them pupate in the styrofoam. Then they come out as adults. Basically, they feed or they disperse and they mate. So the nice thing about these beetles, if you need something to eat things, some things only eat as larvae, some only eat as adults. They do it at both phases. So they eat all the time. So basically, from egg to adult takes a little less, a month to 2 months, and then they're around for about 4 to 6 more months as adults. So you can get they grow very fast, the colonies, as some of my students will attest to right now, but you can get a lot of these things pretty quickly. So why study them? I came up with 3 reasons why I like to study them. Reason 1, of course, is, as Dr. Nordberg talked about, my interest is in ecology. Okay? And they serve an important ecological function. Okay? They are what are known as detritivores, the eaters of detritus, eaters of dead things. So when you think of detritivores, who do you think of? Vultures. Everybody thinks of vultures, right? Okay. So these are vultures. You call them vultures. I call them the competition, because basically a lot of my selections, my collections come from roadkills, and so I get that. That's part of them. I'll talk about some of the other sources because that's kind of important here in a minute here. So they are also what you think of, and I love vultures because the greatest thing about vultures are a group of vultures. Depending on what sort of group we're talking about has a different name. I love it. So for example, a bunch of vultures flying. Anybody know what that's called? That's a kettle. Okay. Bunch of vultures in a tree. That's a committee. Okay. Bunch of vultures around carrion. That's a wake. So it's wonderful. I love great names. So anyway, but this isn't to talk about birds. So back to insects then. Okay. So reason number 2 why I study them. Okay, and that is they are one of the detritivores of West Tennessee. Who are some of the other detritivores? Well, there's this one here. These are called burying beetles. We see this around. Great colors. Anything red and black. Go dogs. Always good. Okay. Then this is the American carrion beetle. Also around here does these sort of things. So beetles are cool. They eat a lot of stuff. But when it comes to eating dead things, the queen mother of all eating dead things is right here, and that is blowflies. Okay, what a great name. So blowflies, of course, and then the larval form, they're called maggots. And so it's like my favorite thing to call somebody, you blowfly maggot. Man, that doesn't get any worse than that. Okay, why they're so great, these are the first responders. They can fly, they can move. If you go outside on a cold day and there's nothing flying around, you opened up some meat, a blowfly will show up. Because they're the first things to find a carcass or a corpse. Okay, which brings up one of the roles I want to talk about in hide beetles here. They have a very important job when it comes to forensic entomology. So again, forensic entomology, what is that? That is using the study of insects in legal investigations. Okay, so they have a role in that sort of stuff. Where do they fit in? In many places, but the most obvious one that they fit in is in the estimation of the post-mortem interval. What does that mean? How long has the stiff been stiff is what that means, okay? So determining how long a corpse has been there, okay? Flies are the first responders. They get there right away. When they get there, the flesh is still very, very fresh, very, very soft, and which is good for flies because they have very soft mouth parts. And they go through that. They go through all sorts of development stages. So if you know the development stages and you find certain stages, you know how long each stage finds, the flies are a great estimation of the post-mortem interval. But later on they leave because the meat starts to get too hard. Okay. Hide beetles don't show up until 5 to 11 days later when the flesh is hard and dry. So they wait. And that sort of begs the question, why? Okay. So my first student I want to talk about here, that would be Hannah Trimble. She was one of the university scholar students here. Hannah went after this problem, started looking into it. What her questions were, do they really prefer that dry meat? Or are they just slow on the punch? They don't get there. Remember, beetles can fly, but they're not near as fast as well as flies fly. Fly. Okay, so are they being outcompeted by the first responders? So if it does, that's got major implications for the post-mortem interval, figuring out what if you just happen to be a place there are no flies and the beetles are there? Can you still 6 or 11 days, or are they taking advantage of the fact that they can get in early? So there's all sorts of stuff going on in there. So basically she set up all these colonies, control chambers, measured for humidity, weight changes of the meat, and things like that. She presented them with pre-weighed fresh meat, pre-weighed dry meat, both. And then she looked at mass loss over 2 days. These guys eat fast. So you can, a chunk of meat was gone in 2 days rather easily. And what she found was they would come readily to fresh meat. In fact, we primarily just use that because it's a lot easier now. But there is a clear preference for dry meat. So there is something going on there that suggests that yes, they're kind of into that. They like the drier meat. My third reason for studying these is museum curation. Okay, so we do a lot of sort of stuff. This what you're looking at there, that's from our museum, my students, that's about a month's work right there. Okay, we've been doing this for many years. We fill many tables now. Okay. Why do we use them? Because they are very highly efficient at removing the soft tissue from the bones. Well, what about boiling? Is that efficient? No, it is not efficient. It damages the bone. Also, there are places inside the head where the meat won't come out. The beetles go get it. Boiling won't do it. And so if you boil something, you have to break the skull to get that meat out. We don't break skulls. We want them whole. So they're very high, and again, the word here, highly efficient, I should be underlining. They're really, really good at it. Okay? They're also very gentler on the bone, but they'll eat everything, including a material known as keratin. Keratin is a protein. It's in your hair. It's in your fingernails. It's in the bills of ducks, what gives them that beautiful color. So it's important for identifying ducks. This is what this is a wood duck head, what it looks like before the beetles get to it, and that's it afterwards. It could be anybody. So that's kind of, so they don't really work well for that. So this is Aaron Carver, another university scholar student. Aaron is much more into curation and ideas of improving curatory techniques. And so she has a number of different projects that she's doing. One was to look at different protocols. Could she find a protocol, a way of feeding those heads to the beetles in which they leave the keratin alone? She's tried all sorts of amazing ways of painting them, trying different things to cover them. The closest, it was not one of those, it was a true scientific study. Most of them go south. This one went south. The best thing she found to keep them off the keratin was using Vaseline filled with DEET, insect repellent. Worked really well, but then they stayed the heck away from the whole head. So anyway, it was a neat study though. Another one of our projects is basically where you work with most of my heads. Number one source for my heads, we get a lot of donations from a great group of people, and those are the West Tennessee sportsmen and trappers. When they do their work, they bring everything to us, or when they're done with that. Fantastic, wonderful people. In other places, when I can beat the vultures, I get the roadkills. The third place is from euthanized animals. Okay, so euthanized animals, basically, what put them down is sodium pentobarbital. That's the standard method. The question is that killing our beetles too? We've had anecdotal indication that it does. So her first study was to look at acute effects. So basically what she looked at was if took beetles, we'd had 2 different pigs with the help of my colleague, Dr. Watson, and my colleague, Dr. Moore. We got 2 pigs. One pig went down with sodium pentobarbital. The other one went down without it. And we have 2 different kinds of meat so we can feed these pigs, or feed these beetles. And what we're finding is we don't find any acute effects, and we're getting a lot of help. The neat thing about Erin, she's a chemistry major, so she can look for the signature of sodium pentobarbital in the meats and in the beetles itself. Way cool stuff I can't do. Okay. Our last project is what we call a prep and rearticulation project. She's putting together. She took an animal, an entire animal. It was a red fox. Took it apart, cleaned it up, and now this will be on display at Paris Landing. They've asked for these sort of things. So we do a lot of work on the side for that. And that brings up another area, this whole area of preparation and rearticulation. And talk a little bit about that. Before I do, I have to definitely thank my colleague, Dr. Diana Watson, one of the vet program here, who does a lot of this work with me. A lot more work than I actually do. So I do want to mention her from that project too. This is one of the projects just finished up here. These are teaching tools. So one of the some of you may know Mr. Charlie Jar, works for it. So Charlie brought me a number of coyotes because I wanted them. And we had a student who rearticulated one leg and kept the other one in pieces so that in studying, you can look at the pieces and then you can look at where they fit in. So this is one of the studying tools here that we do there. This is what we call this our funny project, because these bones are, this is the humerus bone, okay? And these are the humerus bones we took from 17 different mammals, and to 2 students then put together this display, and you can see it's a comparative anatomy display, and you can see the changes in the various structures as they go. Get asked this question a lot. So what's the biggest project a student has done so far? And for that, we want you to meet Ron. This is Ron. Okay. Ron they did an entire horse. This was a cool project because it was basically very cooperative project. Okay, so my students got the bones. Okay. Engineering worked on the structures, and the real work came from the veterinary sciences program. This student, Savannah Matheny, who's worked with Dr. Watson, they're the ones that put the whole thing together. Savannah's now pretty close to finishing up vet school she's a tech, Virginia Tech. So that was our biggest project ever on that sort of stuff. Just some of the other things that still got going on right now, and this is only, basically today we started 2 new projects that didn't make the slides here. We have all sorts of stuff. So this student here, so when you finish the skulls, they're kind of dingy, so you want to make them a nice color so they really pop, with nice white skulls. That's costs money. It's an expensive process. And so we've developed a cheaper way of doing this, but we need to put the protocol together. And so this student here, this is Harley Huber. She's a freshman this year, and she's taking over the ways of measuring skull color and looking at the different timings of using chemicals at different times. So that's her project, okay? More work with determining, besides we're back on the sodium pentothal, we've looked at some of the acute effects, but now we want to look at the long-term effects, chronic effects on hide beetles. And I have 2 students working on that. One being Moni Phillips, who's here, and she's doing much of the actual hands on the ground, boots on the ground rather, work of starting colonies, feeding them the different types of pig meat, and that sort of stuff. And then Aaron's going to do the chemistry on the background of all this sort of stuff. So I want to give a quick, finish up with the beetles and bones part, a quick shout out, acknowledgments to 3 important groups here. So first are, like as I said, the West Tennessee Sportsman and Trapper. They give us lots of stuff. We have so much stuff that with some classes, like Entomology, where students learn skulls, they take their skulls home with them. They're gone. So it's a wonder, that's a big plus, do that sort of stuff. So lots of work from them. They're very good at helping them out. I can't thank them enough. The second group I want to thank are my colleagues, both natural resources, veterinary sciences, biological sciences, who do provide 2 things to this project. A lot of them are ideas. Like, hey, think we could do this? Yeah, we give it a try. And the other students, constantly sending students for us to work with. So that's wonderful here. And then the third group I want to call is right there, and that's my students. I appreciate them because you think of the stuff we do, it's way out of everybody's comfort zone, okay, some of the things we do. But they're willing to give it a try, so I'm very happy to be able to work with these students. Change gears, okay. So that's some of the research. I want to talk about some internships that we've had going on for pretty much now 6 or 7 years, okay, that go on here. And this basically, and this is pest detection. We're still with insects, but it's looking at them from a different. So insect beetles, good. These bad moths. So I want to talk about the bad moths. And while we're at, there's also some bad beetles out there in the world that we're looking at here. So this is part of the pest detection surveys that we do. Okay, so I'm going to get my acknowledgments up front to these people. First of all, these are USDA funded grants. They're funded through APHIS, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services. These are multiple grants, multiple years, 2 grants each year we're talking about here. So they're the funding source. But at the same time, we've got to do, we do these surveys, our targeted area is places that might possibly have these insects, and so we do a lot of work with intermodal trucking line places, any sort of industry that imports from other countries. So these people often have very, very tight security, and they're very good about letting us onto their property to do these sort of sampling. So I can't thank them enough. Anyway, so they give us property access to what we do, which begs the question, what do we do? Okay, so basically what we do is we go all throughout West Tennessee, and I mean all over West Tennessee, and we're monitoring for some really, really bad invasive species. I mean really bad guys, much worse than those little skin beetles. Okay, a few of them are beetles. These are some of the examples here. Ambrosia beetles. This is the longhorn beetle. This is one of the weevils that are a real problem here. But most of the ones I go after are moths, and these are the bad moths here that we go after. Okay, how do we do it? Okay, so what we do is we go to these areas we've identified lots of industry maybe nearby, and the industry is often near forested areas or cropland areas. It could be if something escaped, we would go to a food source. And we set up insect traps, lots of insect traps, okay? The traps, these are all pheromone traps, so we attract they're very, very specific. You get exactly the species you're after. And the traps all look different, depends on what you're after. So this is called a funnel trap. So to us, it looks like a bunch of funnels together. To certain beetles, that looks like a tree. And they hit that, and when they hit that, they wah, down into the bottom here, and we catch them down here. Funnel trap, similar to that, this is a cross vein trap set up here for another sort of beetle. These are bucket traps, lots of bucket traps. That's a wing trap, delta traps, and milk carton traps. So it depends on what you can't just set up one trap and catch all. Okay, so what happens is we've got these sites all set up, many, many sites, and they have to be sampled every 2 weeks. So we sample half of them 1 week, half of them the next week, other half the next week. And so lots of driving in this work, needless to say. We collect everything, so we then do simple identifications like, yeah, that's a moth and I don't like the looks of it. And those are then sent to Mississippi State or out to Massachusetts. If Mississippi State does identifications, some we send to Massachusetts for DNA analysis, for genetic work to find out who it is. And what we expect out of this is we expect to find nothing. That's what we're doing, is looking for nothing. Okay? And that sort of begs the question, why look for pests that you don't expect to find? And the purpose is, well, one is the early warning system. If you do find them, then you can act quickly. But more importantly is, what is the major industry of West Tennessee? Agriculture. And where does it go? Out in the world. So by what we do is we can then certify our products as being pest-free for all those bad moths and all those bad beetles. So this is the main reason, is as long as we don't find things, all is good. It's a wonderful world. Where do we do it at? There's West Tennessee. You've all seen it pretty much here. We're working in industrial parks, industries, importing places. Again, big, large areas where trucks come. You think of the south side of Jackson, for example, is a good example of that. Large intermodal habits. This is where we work, because if we're going to find something, that's likely where it's going to be. So this is where the pest detection study, these are basically, ever since 2019, we've been working these 13 locations in 7 counties. And then in 2022, we doubled basically our workload. This began a study known as the Asian defoliator study. Okay, 10 more locations, 3 more counties. We're all the way down to Millington right now, so we drive all over the place. Okay, so what are our Asian defoliators? I need to mention that. These are them. Okay, so these are invasive moth species that basically, again, they destroy trees. Like that. So, and if you think about our economy throughout Tennessee, I've got some of my people here, our parks people here. this major impact on tourism and recreation if you start losing a lot of these trees. Our forest commodities, a big problem here too. So, with that in mind, we've been doing this since 2019. Our goal is not to catch anything bad. Well, we try to catch where we have, hopefully not bad. Have we caught any new invasive species? And the answer is yes, we have. So be it, okay? So we caught the Tennessee statewide record for this little bad bug. This is an elm bark beetle. So they get underneath the elms and basically eat the phloem and kill the elm trees. So that sounds pretty bad for this invasive species. But this is kind of a weird thing. Let's talk about a bittersweet confluence. The elms that this hits tends to go after invasive elm trees. So, yeah, get out there, do that. So some invasive species only go after other invasives. So that's one. The other one over in Crockett County is the first record of this. This is a spongy moth. Okay, not good, guys. Okay, spongy moth. Why do they call them that? It's because of their egg masses. This is an egg mass on a tree of a spongy moth. They look kind of spongy. So, any of you ever heard of the spongy moth? No. Well, let's look at the name spongy moth. Let's take spongy moth. Let's slide it over here a little bit. And then let's scramble up the letters a bit, and you get gypsy moth. Okay, that's what it is. Okay. So again, there's Entomological Society of America has a branch known for the Better Common Names Project. So this is one of many names that have been changed, and as far as I'm concerned, works for me. There's a lot of really bad names out in the world, and have been since I began in this field. I'm all glad. Spongy moth works for me, but don't change it again. Okay, so it works for me. So to me, it doesn't matter. Okay, remember, I'm a scientist. I like scientific names. That's Lemantria dispar. Has been, always will be. So I'm kind of good on that. Okay, so because of this, they found there Crockett County's been basically. Then they call in an airstrike at that point. They bring in the big guns, come in, and then they start. We still monitor Crockett County, but so do a whole lot of other people now, making sure it hasn't been found again. So all is good on that. Okay, so the future of these projects here. Okay, we're funded again for 2025. I'm looking for people to help me. Thank you. So I've got a couple of my students here that are going to be part of the project this year. We'll start preliminary work in April on this, and it'll go all the way through the end of September. We'll do our sampling again this year. And so I'm expecting to have another great group of students. I do every year to help with this project here. That's all I have. That's what I want to talk about, my beetles and my bad moths. So, and I guess I can open it up for questions. Anybody got a question? Oh. Dr. Warfel.
Well, I'm interested in your sodium pentobarbital issue.
Uh-huh.
So, have you thought about would it be possible to use smaller animals? So, of course, there are IUCOOK protocols for using some mice and rats. And you just do CO2 inhalation and cervical dislocation or decapitation.
Right.
So that you wouldn't have to worry about the drug.
Yeah.
And you could see what effect that had with and without the drug, because you could also choose to euthanize.
Right. So. Okay, so basically, and make sure I get this right. So instead of, so you're talking about there are other ways to euthanize animals besides sodium pentobarbital, and that's very true. Again, I'm a scavenger. We're getting these animals from other people that use sodium pentobarbital. So again, you could do others. We could do others. We could do ourselves, use other things and not worry about it. But for example, but when Murray State calls and says, "We have 24 dogs. You want them?" That's the kind of stuff I do. Yeah. So, but it's going to be sodium pentobarbital. So it's just again, it's a resource that we have to try to get around. So, but yeah, the other methods, it would be nice if everything was gassed or differently. So, Dr. Bushhouse.
You may have mentioned this, but for all the students that are sitting here, for all the students who are sitting here, are your research internships in the summer paid?
Well, yes, they are. So right, yes, they are paid an hourly wage. That's right now $10 an hour, but I'm trying to up that. I'm doing my best. So, yeah. So yes, they are paid. Thank you for that. So, paid rather well. Yeah. Other questions? Dr. Watson.
What would be your dream skull?
Well, that's interesting. You should ask that question right now, and because right now I've sort of, well, my favorite skull of all skulls is the otter. If you've ever seen an otter, the shape of the skull, it looks like something that chased Sigourney Weaver around a spaceship. So it's a real cool looking skull. Having said that, the neatest skull I've ever done, we've just started doing. We have many, and that's the skull of an animal known as the paddlefish. And if you would, on your way out, look at there's a paddlefish in the display. It is way cool. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh, it was a similar question to that.
Where does that paddlefish live?
It's primarily in the Mississippi River and the Tennessee River. So we get the land between the two lakes, Lake Barkley, Kentucky Lake. So they're an interesting fish in the fact that you can only fish them for a very short period of time because they're not fished for their flesh. They're fished for the eggs. So this is domestic caviar. So it doesn't take much of a biologist to know that you can wipe out a species pretty quickly if all you're taking is pregnant females. So.
Great. Well, if there are additional questions, I would suggest that you come up and talk with Dr. Grubaugh, and I'm sure he can set you up if you want some domestic caviar taken from a paddlefish out of the muddy Mississippi River. That sounds so tasty. But I'm so thankful for all of you coming out this evening. Keep an eye on our runway page. For those of you that are students, we do post those over to the Cork app as well. If you're interested in getting your name in a drawing through the UTM Plus, make sure you sign in one of the sheets on the back table. You'll need to put your 960 number. But I want to thank all of you for coming, but hopefully you can help me thank Dr. Grubaugh for his presentation. Thank you.